the buzz that we have when you guys gather and hear you guys interacting warms my heart. I know it warms the Lord's heart because we're doing real life together. And that's really what today's talk's all about, is how to connect in a deeper way. And let me just review quickly what I've been doing here at TGIW for the 2021 year. It's based on a word called MoMENtum, and the word men is buried right in the middle of that word, and that's what I'm about this year, investing in men, resourcing men, even more than I've ever done before. And I just believe that some of the things that I've shared in the past weeks that I've had a chance to communicate is just reinforcing the valuable need for us to gather, to be together, but be even more intentional than we've ever been before. And let me just say this. I hope that you will make plans to be here next week. Damian Cooper is going to be speaking next week. And I don't want to give away kind of his byline of what's occurring, but gentlemen, there's some things occurring that you need to hear right from his lips, right from his heart. And I want to tell you something. What he's going to share is going to impact Character That Counts and TGIW for many years. And not just here in Lee Summit, the metro area, but I believe around the nation and the world. Damian has a vision and a dream that's mind-boggling. And Chris, you're very aware of what the number he's talking. He wants to impact 1 billion people, and Character That Counts is going to be part of that dream. So anyway, come next week. You're going to be encouraged. You're going to be blessed by what you hear. Now, one of the resources I've been using for this series of talks is based on a Barna research study called the 5 Essentials to Engage Today's Men. And what Barna discovered in this study is really the basis of what I want to share with you on how to reach men in this modern day culture that we live in. Parts 1 and 2 of the series have already been recorded. They're on our YouTube channel. I put that in your notes in case you want to go back and view or review, or maybe you didn't even get a chance to hear them last time. But I believe that's a good setup for what I want to do today. And I believe this, the things that I've been sharing are going to help men individually. They're going to help men's ministries. They're going to help churches. And it's going to strengthen families, help you in your parenting, and help you understand the life-giving message of Jesus Christ, even more than you've done before. Now, in the study, what's interesting is they found some undeniable shifts generationally and otherwise, how men are charting their way forward. Whether it's their family, career, friendships, mental or spiritual health, here's what we know. Men need each other more than they've ever needed them before. We really do need each other. And that's, again, what I want to address today. So in their study, they identified and categorized 5 specific areas. And I wrote them in your notes so you could see the 5 areas that they discuss. First of all, there's identity and vocation. Again, those are the 2 parts that I've already shared. And then there's well-being, relationships, and church engagement. And today I'm going to tackle those final 3 because there's a really obvious overlap on how the implementation of these take place. Now, you might recall from the study, Barna, the representative sample included all men ages 18 and up. It included Christian men, which they determined are people that have a walk of faith. They say faith is important to them. They've been to a worship church and a worship service in the last month. That's how they define Christian men. And then they also study non-Christian men. And this includes even people who are religious, but they don't know Jesus, and then atheists, agnostics, the whole gamut. So look at all men 18 and older in their study. And so here's the first point that I want to address today, this thing called well-being. Well-being. I wrote in your notes this area has to do with the level of satisfaction that men are feeling related to 13 different areas. And I listed them here. It's your health, your physical health, your mental health, your financial health, your spiritual health. It includes your parenting, the depth of your friendships, your balancing work and family responsibilities, your leisure, rest activities, your sex life, and your future. They cover the gamut of where men are at, what they're dealing with, and what the issues are. And what I found interesting about the study, I wrote it here, were their findings related to loneliness. For all men, even those who are self-practicing Christians. Here's some of the, and this is not in your notes, but here's some of the interesting sidebars that I found in this study. For example, loneliness is especially a struggle for ethnic minorities. Did you know this? Specifically, 54% of Black Christians reported recent struggles with loneliness compared to 34% for white Christians. Also, they found that if you're politically liberal, you're more likely than conservatives in struggling with loneliness. 49% compared to 35%. And I asked this question, so what's the contributors to loneliness? Why are men feeling this way? Well, this will not surprise you when I give you your first fill-in. It's actually the word technology. Technology is actually one of the factors that are leading to loneliness. Now, social media and other platforms of technology actually doesn't connect to men. It actually isolates you more. And what's ironic about that, guys, is Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these things were supposed to get us closer. Because when you see photos and events and you kind of know people, but it's done the exact opposite thing. Because what happens is when we look at this stuff, it removes personal interaction and it makes us feel worse about ourselves than actually better about ourselves. And if someone doesn't like our post, that we take it personal. And we look at other people doing these glamorous, wonderful things about what their life is like, and we feel unworthy, we feel unqualified, and it actually drives us more into isolation. I mean, that's the irony of this. Now, what we discovered in this study, and I wrote here in your notes, there's no disputing that being a Christian actually helps men experience greater satisfaction in all those well-being areas. Those 13 areas that I listed earlier. But get this, but the man who purposely engages in relationships is far more healthy. That you're feeling far more healthy. What I'm talking about is putting down your cell phone, your other devices, and getting eyeball to eyeball, face to face, shoulder to shoulder, back to back with men and actually engaging them. And get this, it includes not just engaging people your own age, but engaging men that are older than you and also younger than you. There's a dynamic that occurs when this begins to occur. Now, I'll tell you something. It's been challenging during this COVID-19 pandemic to do exactly what I'm talking about for a lot of reasons. Men have had to work really hard to make connections happen. And I'll be honest with you, a significant number of men are not doing well in this area. They have not done well during this pandemic to connecting. In fact, here's some of the sad stats. Did you know porn usage is way up during the pandemic? Did you know that alcohol consumption is way up? Other addictive behaviors way up. Suicide rates are way up. I mean, these are some of the ways that people have handled this crisis. Is this thing has not driven them to people, it's like driven them away from people. And they haven't connected the way they need. And there's a major, major hit, particularly difficult for the 18 to 35-year-old young man who is not a believer. It's really been a struggle for them. It's tragic what's occurring, and a lot of these men are struggling, and a huge part of this is tied to the issue of loneliness. They're isolated with no community, no relationships, and support to lean on. Now, some of you were on the line yesterday when I gave this talk, and so you've heard everything I've said up to this point except what I'm about to share with you right now. 30 minutes yesterday after I finished my talk, I was doing my morning devotional. I've been doing a series of readings through YouVersion with a number of different guys, and I'm on a plan put out by actually Brian Orr. Some of you might know Brian. And there's a group of men, about 20 of us that are going through some things that he provides. And it's called this one was called a 14-day devotional to becoming your most masculine self. Yesterday, day 6, March 23rd, for this series, this was the opening line I read 30 minutes after I finished my talk. There is a plague of loneliness among men. I mean, I get chills just reading that because this was yesterday. In truth, the phrase that comes to mind is this: the friendless man. But friends are the best reflection of a man's happiness, his priorities, and his health. And I'm going to put a pause to finish what I read yesterday because I want to go to the next word, and then I'll read to you the rest of this devotional. This leads me to this area called relationships. Relationships. I wrote in your notes this: men were designed and created for relationships. This includes a personal relationship with God Almighty, which, by the way, is the most important relationship you'll ever have. I mean, it is paramount. It's the basis for everything we're talking about today. This vertical relationship has nothing to do with religion. In fact, you've heard me say this before, and I put in your notes. You know, religion is man's attempt to get to God. Relationship is God's attempt to get to man. This is about a personal relationship with the holy God who, guess what? He loves you. He has a wonderful plan for your life. There's no one who believes more in you than God himself. And he wants that through an intimate relationship with you. Now that's the first relationships at paramount. But guys, I wrote this, but in addition to that vertical relationship, we also have this thing called horizontal relationships. We're created to connect with other men. Ecclesiastes 4:9-12 tells us that 2 is better than 1. It tells us that a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. And then I wrote this in your notes. I didn't want you to miss it. Men are better when they're together. We are better when we're together, whether it's in our marriages, our parenting, our work situations. Relationships shape the way we do life, and when we're doing it with other men, we're better. In fact, one of the Barna studies that again I'm looking at, so this is not in your notes, but here's what they said, and this is a staggering stat. It says this: when a man has a confidant in his life, a battle buddy, an accountability partner, a trusted and loyal friend, you can call it whatever you want to call it, there's a significant upgrade in your satisfaction level in all areas of your life. Let me give you 2 examples just to point this out. Get this. In your marriage, just talk about your marriage. If you have a confidant in your life, again, a battle buddy, a friend, there is a 68% satisfaction with your marriage. If you don't have anybody you're connected to relationally as a confidant, there's only a 38% satisfaction in marriage. That's a 30% difference. How about your relationship with your kids? 55% satisfaction if you've got a battle buddy, 28% if you don't have a battle buddy. In all 13 of those areas, the differences are unbelievable. And so it points out the value of connection. And so what I'm talking about, I wrote it again in your notes, I'm talking about having somebody in your life beyond your spouse, specifically another man, where authenticity, vulnerability, transparency, and intimacy has taken place. You're not giving into, and here's your fill-in, the I'm fine response. You know, typically, what do we do as guys when somebody asks us how we're doing? Well, I'm doing fine. But in the form of an acronym, you know what you're really saying? Here's what you're saying: feelings I'm not expressing. Or someone said it this way: I'm fearful, I'm insecure, I'm needy, and I'm emotionally exhausted. That's what really fine means. You're saying, hey, don't even ask me. Don't even go there. I'm doing just fine, because we don't want to get into what? The reality that we don't have a friend. We don't have a battle buddy. We don't have somebody we're connected to. We're fearful. We're fearful, and we hold back. Most men, and this is a sad thing for me to tell you guys, most men don't have what I'm talking about today. They don't have it. Their best buds, their best dudes they hang out with, it's all superficial stuff. News, weather, sports, superficial things are taking place. That's the reality. Let me give you some stats. Churchpastor.com recently reported that 78% of all pastors don't have a single friend. 78%. A real friend. The kind of friend I'm talking about today. Now, I'll be honest, this one actually makes sense to me, because many pastors fear that if they are perceived as anything but perfect by their congregation, guess what? They don't get a job anymore. So I understand the reality that pastors are fearful for getting real, because guess what? They're flawed just like us. But what about the non-pastors? What about the rest of us? Most of us in the room here today. Here's what the stats tell us. Over 50% of all Christian men don't have what I'm talking about today. They do not have this type of friend, and yet there are candidates everywhere. There's golfing buddies, there's fishing partners, there's neighbors, there's co-workers, family that we could be doing this with, but again, we're satisfied with, I'm fine. Matthew West has a song out right now. You may have heard it. It's playing almost every hour on the hour. And it's the song called The Truth Be Told. And here's the lyrics of that song I put in your notes because this song strikes at the very core of what I'm talking about today. He says this, line number 1, you're supposed to have it all together. And when they ask you how you're doing, just smile and tell them never better. Line number 2, everybody's life is perfect except yours. So keep your messes and your wounds and your secrets safe with you behind closed doors. But the truth be told, the truth is rarely told. I say, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. Oh, I'm fine. Hey, I'm fine. But I'm not. I'm broken. And when it's out of control, I say it's under control, but it's not, and you know it. I don't know why it's so hard to admit it, when being honest is the only way to fix it. There's no failure, no fall, there's no sin you don't already know, so let the truth be told. Then verse 2 says this, there's a sign on the door that says, come as you are, but I doubt it. Because if you live like that was true, every Sunday morning pew would be crowded. But didn't you say your church should look more like a hospital? A safe place for the sick, the sinner, and the scarred, and the prodigals like me. So men, I urge you to not tell your closest confidants, your friends, your allies, that I'm fine. You know, there's a group of men that live in Des Moines, Iowa. They've got an accountability group, and they call themselves the Pigs. And I love their acronym. It stands for Pretty Important Guy Stuff. And they've made a commitment that they're going to get transparent. They're going to get real. They're going to get vulnerable. They're going to get intimate. Scary words for guys, but they're like, we don't have time to just play casual Christianity. We're going to make this a focused and direct time. And I tell you what, that's the kind of group I want to be a part of. In fact, thankfully, the last 30 years, I've had a group of guys like that I've met with every Thursday morning. We gather. We've had to do it by Zoom for the last year, unbelievably, but guess what? It is a life-changing group, and so I know what I'm talking about. So let me go back and refinish what I started with this devotional I read yesterday. I read you the opening salvo, but here's what it goes on to say. Most men have simply lost touch with the men who mean the most to them. They find themselves awash in a sea of casual relationship. They do work with other men, and they can usually scare up a group of guys to go yell and scream at the sports bar. Yet when asked who they would turn to if they were about to have an affair, or if their marriage were coming apart, or if they were out of town and needed someone to get their son out of jail, most are at a loss to come up with one single name. What most of us have is not a band of brothers. We don't have a tribe, a posse, a group of guys who know us and are fun to be with, but we have no problem challenging us and have no problem challenging us to be who we need to be. Men, we cannot ascend to our best selves or our God-given purposes if we walk alone, or if all we have in common with other men is entertainment and pleasure. Men need friends with whom they share a common spirit, a mutual devotion with each other's best, and a sacrificial commitment to protect, encourage, and defend. And then here's the last paragraph, and such a powerful ending to this. He says, hear me, gentlemen, we will never become the men we're called to be unless we learn the art of friendship and intentionally cultivate deep, meaningful, and rowdy relationships with other men. And I love the fact that they use the word rowdy, because guess what? The world has stolen the word rowdy from us, right? We know rowdy, but guess what? There's a God rowdy that he wants us to be, connecting in a real and dynamic way with other guys. That's what we're talking about, relationship here, relationship. Now, here's the ironic thing about this, guys. What we found out in this study, again, by double and triple some amounts, you are better together when you got this confident in your life, this guy that you do life with. And so here's what we discovered, guys. The Barna study clearly shows that friendships, especially intergenerational friendships, significantly correlate with greater overall relationship satisfaction. So again, it's connecting not just with men your age, but men up and below you in terms of your age. Vital. Finally, let's talk about church engagement. Church engagement. To understand this one fully, we got to answer this question. Who's in the pews? Or maybe your church doesn't have pews anymore, have seats. Who's sitting in the seats now? Well, I wrote in your notes, here's who's actually attending church of this study. 47% are 55 and older. 34% are between the ages of 35 and 55, and less than 20% are between the ages of 18 and 35. Clearly, the demographics show, guys, that the younger generation, this lower age grade, is not attending church to the volume as the older guys. Now, there is a silver lining to this. And let me tell you the silver lining. Young men who are actually connected to a Bible teaching church actually mean it when they do go to church. What I'm saying is this: they tend to get more involved in church activities, small group Bible study. They're more likely to be involved in community service projects. They're more likely to attend the seminars and the workshops and participate either by mentoring or being mentored. And so once you get them there, they're engaged. They're engaged. And so why are all these men coming? The ones that are coming, why do they come? Well, here's what the stats show us. 88% it's in order to grow their faith. They're there because they want to grow their faith. That's pretty obvious. 68% say that they're in church to learn how the scriptures apply to their life. That makes sense too. But notice this third reason, and it's especially predominant for young people. 54% attend because it's important to be involved in community. Community. And that's one of the underlying things we found in the study is that 18 to 35 says, I need relationship. And guess what? When it's an older man, that's a win. When it's a younger man, that's a win. When it's involved with doing a service, that's what they're looking for, a place to engage us. Engage us. What they found that that 32% of all men, guess what, are involved in some kind of men's ministry. And they find out that when they're there, a very, very large percentage say this was worthy of my time, this was good, when it's not superficial, when it's real, when it's practical, when it's relational. They're saying this is really good. But here's what we found out in the study. 43% of the men say, I wish I had something like that to go to, but my church offers nothing for our men. We have nothing for our men. So we are blessed, guys. Look around the room to have a community-based study with men of all kinds of denominations and backgrounds and ages. This is rare. This is good. This is good. I'm glad my church offers a men's night every Tuesday night. We've got a thing called Base Camp, and we have a bunch of men that show up. Probably helps that we feed them food. That attracts men, to our events. Greg, you have got your 268 at First Baptist Blue Springs. That's an attractive thing for men. And so we have opportunities here in this area. But guess what? A lot of men don't have this. It's really a feeding pool for what I'm talking about, of men getting real and getting happening. So what can churches do to help men? What can we do as a church body? The quick answer is a lot. But what specifically can a church provide? And there's three words I want you to write in here. Here's what we can provide to men: peace, rest, and hope. That's what we provide, guys. If men are honest with themselves, when we lay our heads on the pillow, at the end of the day, we'll realize, just like Matthew West in those lyrics, that we're broken, right? What men need is restoration, reconciliation, a sense of value, importance. And guess what? A biblically based church can help men who are battling over work, anxiety, fear, frustration, disappointment, anger, a whole host of negative emotions that are being thrown at you from all sectors. We found out, guys, there's a clear connection with improved satisfaction in all areas of your life when you begin to connect with other men, and specifically men in a church-based kind of a group. So why do they come? Two things we found out. Two areas. Number one, it happens because they're getting good content. They're getting good material, good things that are practically they can put into place. Good content makes a difference. But here's the second thing. It underscores exactly what I'm talking about today. Simply hanging out with the men who are on the same journey themselves. Just simply being together, connecting, guess what? Makes this happen. So at the end of the day, guys, at the end of the day, and what I'm trying to drive home today is a central point. We're in desperate need for relationships to combat loneliness, being overwhelmed. And I meet all kinds of guys who tell me, well, Rod, I really don't need anybody in my life. And I'm not trying to be mean by saying this, but I have guys say, well, Jesus is my accountability partner. Now that sounds really spiritual, but I'll be honest, that doesn't work. Because guess what? We can tell Jesus to take a hike real easy when our hormones are raging and we're see something we want and we think we deserve, and we can say, well, Jesus, I'll take a little break from you for now because I want to go do this. We do that all the time. And here's what I tell guys who say that. I say, you may not think you need someone, but someone needs you. You may think, well, I'm above this, but guess what? Somebody needs you. And here's the reality, guys, what I've discovered countless times as I've shared this with men. They'll come back to me, circle back to me later and say, that guy that I thought I was going to help, he ended up helping me. It's an iron sharpening iron relationship that takes place. That's exactly what ends up happening, guys. So I want to close today with giving you 6 practical tips, 6 practical things you can do to get relationally connected to 1, 2, or maybe a group of guys. Because that's the big question. So how do I find these guys? How do I not be the stat that says I have no friends, real friends? Transparent friends, intimate friends. How do I do this? Number 1, I'm going to ask you to pray and then risk. And with prayer, I say this, talk to God about it. Ask him to guide you to the right person or persons. And by the way, don't get frustrated if this doesn't happen instantly. That's why you keep praying. God, give me a person. I want to connect. And here's one of the big questions you're going to have to wrestle with. Can I trust this person with my stuff? And can they trust me with their stuff? It's risky. Sharing your failures, your weaknesses, your frustrations, that's not the norm. But remember, nobody's perfect. We're all on the same journey together. We're all just walking by faith and not by sight. We're all imperfect. I tell people all the time, it's not about perfection, it's about direction. And that's the journey that we're on, this journey of walking with Christ. So pray and risk. And then secondly, make a commitment to be honest. I wrote here, don't waste your time and other men's time if you're not going to be honest with God and others yourself. What I'm talking about today is not going to work if you're just going to not be truthful about your responses. So make a commitment to be honest. Thirdly, start with at least one man, at least one guy. And by the way, here are some of the qualities that I think you need to be looking for. First of all, look for somebody that loves Christ. They might be one step behind you, one step ahead of you, or maybe extremely ahead or behind you. But guess what? If they love Christ, that's a common denominator. How about this one? They want to see you succeed and grow in your walk of faith. They're for you. They're not against you. It's somebody you respect, somebody you feel compatible with, somebody whose judgment you trust. The last thing you want to do, guys, is second guess the person you give an authority to speak truth in your life. Proverbs 13:20 says, he who walks with the wise grows wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm. Now, chances are the man you end up connecting to might already be an existing friend, somebody you've done life with, but it's been far too casual. And you may say, hey, we need to step up our game here. We need to, go deeper here. And so look around and say, God, who do you have for me? In fact, Stu Weber says this, I wrote in your notes, he says this: accountability grows over time. And as your relationship and confidence in one another develops, as your acceptance and affirmation take root, then you earn the right to ask the hard questions. So once you've identified that guy, what happens next? Well, point 4, agree on the areas you want to be accountable with. The goal is to avoid being superficial, cliche in your conversation. You want to create a safe place where you and your partners get real. So you're going to answer questions like this: what do I struggle with? What's your weak spots? What's your blind spots? Do I have any secrets? What's my areas of temptation? And to get to the root of that, what I've discovered over the years, I implore you to have some questions. Some preset questions. That's point 5. Some preset questions. And the best questions you can ask and answer are questions that you've established for yourself. But if you need a starting point, if you need kind of a place to begin, where's my questions here?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. I thought I had them up here. I'm going to provide to you, no charge today. They cost after this morning, but I'm going to provide to you 2 different sets of questions if you need some place to get started. The blue question is what I call the fact questions, about the facts, the facts, the facts, the facts. 10 great questions on the facts. The yellow questions are the feelings. So if you're a facts guy or a feelings guy, guess what? I got you covered. 10 questions for you and your partner to begin. And it's just a starting point. It's just a starting point. Yesterday, Greg shared, and I'd never heard this, Greg, until you shared it yesterday. Their church, they have a thing called Spirit-Led Men, and they've got 6 different questions that they ask. The S stands for a spiritual question. How you doing spiritually? The P stands for purity. The I stands for integrity issues. The R stands for relationships. How you doing relationally? The I stands for intentionality. Intentionality means in your obedience walk. And the T stands for total body, your physical body. And then the LED stands for living every day. And that's the questions that they've designed. Again, it's simply saying, I need some structure, because here's what happened, guys. If you don't have some questions, guess what? You'll slip back into superficial stuff. You will, casual. So these keep you on point. They keep you focused. They keep you heading the same direction. And then the last thing I'll mention, point 6, is this thing called a covenant. I urge you to make a covenant. A covenant gives you a roadmap and a set of ground rules to help give structure and boundaries. It describes your commitment level to one another. It describes the resolve to keep your group a healthy and safe group. And there's 3 types of covenants that I've discovered over the years. There's assumed covenants, which, by the way, is not a good covenant, because everybody's making their assumptions about why we're here. I don't know. I'm here because, you're on different pages. Assumed covenant's not a good covenant at all. An oral covenant's a little better. Oral is you kind of verbalize, hey, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? That's good. But guys, if you want a great covenant, I encourage you to write it down, a written covenant. And say, here's the roadmap. Here's the guidelines. Now, I made this offer yesterday, and I'll make it to you again. I've actually developed a template with 15 different points to consider as part of a covenant. And I give you permission to plagiarize, to steal, to do whatever you want to put those in. I'll email it to you for free if you want it. All you got to do is come up to me later and say, hey, email me this. Yesterday, I had 45 guys on the Zoom call. One guy reached out to me yesterday and says, give me the template. I'm like, come on, guys, come on. More of you need to get this than just one. You can also, it's in my book, Character Counts Who's Counting Yours. If you want to pick that up, so many of you already have this in your possession, but that template's in this book. 15 different things to consider in terms of a written covenant, By the way, my email address should be in the notes, right? It's on there. If you want to email me, you can do that. Everything we've talked about today, guys, boils down to this one word. It's the last 3 parts of this Barna study. It's the word relationship. It's all about relationship. My favorite Francis Chan quote sums it up really well. It's how I'll end today. He says, do you not know that nothing you do in this life will ever matter unless it's about loving God and loving the people he has made? That's the vertical and the horizontal in action right there. Connecting with him, connecting with others. The very last thing that the little devotional I read from yesterday ends with this. Here's the challenge. Take stock of your friendships. Are they shallow, temporary, or unfulfilling? Or do they inspire you and make you to yearn to be a great man, a manly man? Lord, thank you for the chance to share truth today. Thank you for you know the story, Lord, with my life. Where would I be today without 30 years ago making a commitment to this word, to this mindset, these principles of connection? And Lord, I pray that every man today would take inventory. We'd be challenged to assess, what kind of friends do I have? What kind of equipping am I getting from the guys I'm spending time with? What do I look like as a result of the people I'm interfacing with? Lord, help us to not be satisfied with the I'm fine responses, but to instead say, Lord, I want to engage in real, transparent, authentic, intimate relationships with other guys. Lord, thank you so much for this day, chance to gather with these men that I love. I love hanging out with these guys. And I love you. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.